lined up.
My name's Logan and welcome to my YouTube channel. I love BMX racing, mountain biking, fishing, and having adventures. Please subscribe and smash that like button.
Alright, you know what we need to do, Logan, with all these bikes in the garage?
Yeah,
What do you think we need to make?
a bike stand.
That's right, we do. And I've seen a few different ones that people have made or even you can buy, and we're going to make our own, fairly similar to a metal one you maybe seen before, but what we want to start out with is basic template, or what we call a flat pattern, right? So I already kind of drew out the basic shape and put a center line on and cut it out a little bit. And I have a few bends on it already to where I think how we want it to be. I think this is going to be pretty close. And I made a little slot right here, which is where the rear hubs just inside the chain stays and will fit. So it's going to support the back of the bike and just a little bit off the ground. You want to make sure it's high enough. I think this will work. So what I'm going to do now, double check this, is I need you to hold the back of the bike up a little bit. Lift it up at the seat maybe. Stand up. Okay, hold it. Oh, hey, whoa, whoa. Nice and straight. Okay. Yeah, so this will work because it's actually going to support it. It's going to keep it a few inches off the ground. Hold it up higher, please. Yeah, that'll work. That way it'll probably work with a 20 or even a 24-inch bike or a bigger mountain bike maybe. All right, let's put this back over here. And so now the next step is, if we like this shape, I'll make it a little straighter once we actually lay it out on the material. I ordered some aluminum, and when we go on the workbench and check that out, start laying this out. All right? All right. All right, now we're on the workbench. And I got the best helper over here. So we ordered some material. This is sheet aluminum, actually off Amazon. Nice and easy to get. And remember the size of it? No, you don't remember? Okay. I want to tell the folks it is
2 feet.
by
1 foot.
1 foot. And this particular material is 100 thou thick. It's pretty thick. I have some other stuff that's 80 thou, but I thought it might be a little too thin, but this will be strong enough, but it's going to be hard to bend manually. I don't have a sheet metal brake or anything to bend it, but this should work. And if we play our cards right, we could make 2 out of this one piece of material, as long as we can bend it. So now what we're going to do is start laying it out with some pens or Sharpies and get some good straight edges, and then we'll start to cutting. Alright, now we have our little square. What we're going to do is we're going to split this piece of metal right down the middle with a line at 6 inches. That way, again, we'll split it evenly. Only have to make 1 cut when we're ready, and should be able to get 2 pieces out of this. So I'm going to mark it right here at 6. And now we're going to make a mark where I want my first chamfer angle to start, right here. And we also we need to find the center line. So we're going to come back on this side. Now the center line should be at 3 inches if it's all perfectly square and it's pretty close. We'll see it's good enough. So we're going to make a little tick mark there. Okay. Now what we're going to do is we're going to measure how wide this piece is. So tape measure. So we want this to be roughly, we're going to start at 2 inches. I think 2 inches. My template was a little short on this side. I want it to have a little more material on there. So we'll go 1 inch on each side of our center line. And so it's symmetrical on the other side. We're going to again use our square. Make another mark right here. Now we're going to connect the dots. Now we're going to connect this edge, or that point, to this point. Okay. Now we're going to connect the dots over here. Now that is the profile for our bike stand. And what we're going to do now is, now we need to start cutting this out. Alright, now we're ready to cut some metal. Now we're going to use our air-powered cutoff wheel. So it has a little carbide disc which will spin and it cuts the material. And you don't have to have power tools if you don't. All you really need is a good set of shears, hand shears, where you can trim it. It just takes a lot of work. And if they're not very sharp, you'll have a hard time cutting this thick material, but this will work well. So, and if you don't have an air compressor, you can always use a Dremel tool with a cutoff wheel. There's a lot of different ways you can cut material. That's really not that hard. But make sure you have your safety glasses. Logan, why don't you step back a little bit while I cut? Alright, so we have our bike stand all cut out, and after I did that, you saw me go over it with the grinder with a sanding disc and all the edges. Whenever you cut metal with any tool or any device, you can always have sharp edges. You definitely want to get this nice and deburred, especially for handling purposes, and especially a little one around. So this is all deburred now. Put a nice big chamfer on all the edges or radii. So got it all cleaned up the workspace. Now we're ready to start cleaning out where we want to bend it and start doing some bending. That should be fun. Alright, so now that it's all trimmed out, I want to do my last cut, which is the cut that's going to hold the rear axle. Now I just double checked some measurements on the bike and my template. I want this to be 600 thou wide. So I'm going to measure 300 thou over from the center line and put my mark, and I'll do that cut. And as far as depth, we had it at about 1.5 inches. So 1.5 feet. This doesn't have to be too precise, but real easy work of that.
Dad, do I need my thing on?
Yeah, you just stand over there by the door. Or you can even go inside, because we're going to have dinner as soon as I'm done with this.
With your things.
Now I have the bike stand all trimmed out, the edges are all sanded down, and it's looking pretty good. And once I figured out where some of my bend lines are going to be, I had the idea before I started bending it. That's the other thing I want to touch on. Now before you start bending your metal, your stand, you want to make sure all your trimming and all your cuts is all done, because once it's bent in shape, it'll be a lot harder to lay it down and make any cuts that you need to. Now I was thinking a cool way to maybe try to personalize this, it's going to add a little more of a challenge to it, is if I could put Logan's initials on the stand, right? So I think this will be pretty cool. So I took some tape, laid it out, I figured out where I wanted it to be in this one panel on the stand. So basically it'll be on this panel right here, centered. I wanted his initials to be there, so I'm not going to be able to cut these out with the cutoff wheel. It's just too big and not as precise. And, but what I think I'm going to do is actually get like a little skill saw and use a little metal blade. Make a couple pilot holes with a drill so I can get the blade in there, and then I'll work just outside of the edge, and then I'll come back in with my little grinder and try to grind it back right up to the edge where I want. So I'm going to surprise him with this. I hope he likes it. I think he'll dig it once it's all done. It's going to, like I said, add a little bit of complexity, but I think it's going to be pretty cool. Really. Now before you start drilling on sheet metal, you always want to make a little punch mark so your drill bit doesn't walk off the sheet metal. So what we're going to do is use a little punch, and we'll put it right here in the middle this letter. I'll do another one over here. You can go nice and easy. Alright, check it out. Pilot holes are done. Now I can have enough room, plenty of room to get my saw blade in here and try to make some cuts. We'll see how this works out. Alright, so I just peeled my tape off, and now I'm going to come in with a few different bits. I'm going to start out with like a larger sanding disc on those longer straight edges. Then I'm going to switch to some smaller ones and see if I can't get this cleaned up. So now when I was editing the video, I realized that for some reason I lost one of the pieces of video that I made when I was actually showing how we clamped up and bent the metal. So I just wanted to do a quick recap here. What I used was this 90-degree angled steel, and I set it up on the edge of the workbench, and then I would lay your material stock that you're going to bend on top of that, and you're going to sandwich it with your other piece of 90-degree angled steel. Because what you want to do is you want to make sure you're bending your material over a very hard edge. And then once you do have that set up like this, you use a couple clamps on each side. And I use the edge of my workbench, squeeze it down, and then you'd hit your material. You just want to make sure you hit your material with like a block of wood. If you just use a hammer right here, you're going to bend it all up. So use a block of wood, big hammer, and bend the material that way. You can always, once you get it close, you can tweak it, bending it on the floor or your workbench to get a little tweaks, but this is how you want to set it up, and this is how I did it. So the first thing I noticed on the old stand is once I tried to put the bike in it, originally I was thinking this might be tall enough and strong enough to support the bike with the tire off the ground. Well, that wasn't the case. It was pretty tippy. It just wasn't just right. So what I ended up doing is taking these down by a couple inches, probably an inch and a half, and then made the slot deeper. So when the bike is in it, the bike would actually be resting on the ground, or the stand in this case. And then I also thought, man, I can make it even more sturdy, but it makes it a little more complicated. I went to Ace Hardware, bought some of this 90-degree aluminum stock, and I'm going to make a little channel for the tire to sit in. So I use that piece, cut it off, and radius the ends to make sure it's all nice and smooth. And I put a couple large pilot holes through the channel as well as the stand, and that way I'm going to secure this just with JB Weld. Originally I would want to TIG weld this, but I don't have a TIG welder and I just want to try to do it myself. So these holes will give the JB Weld a lot of strength rather than just putting it on the seam, which I will do. So I'm going to do JB Weld this in two rounds. First through the holes, and I'll put some tape on the back side, let these fill up, and then I'll come back and do the actual edges. Alright, so I let the JB Weld sit up overnight, and now it is rock solid. So I'm going to take the tape off, and I'm going to put some JB Weld on the front side. Alright, so that epoxy is looking really good, the JB Weld. That's been sitting up for about 6 hours. It'll cure in about 15 is what the instructions say. So I unmasked it, and it looks good. And now we're going to do another bead of JB Weld on the back side of the little bike channel. So I'm going to have my trusty helper here.
Logan.
Yeah. Alright, once you squeeze out some of the weld, take off the cap. Yep. Yep, it's still, no, not yet. The cap is still on. You got to take the cap off. So you twisted it and now pull it off. Good. Put that over on the workbench. Now we don't want to touch any of the epoxy with our hands, but squeeze it out slowly, and I'll tell you when to stop. Okay, a little more. Stop. Okay, good. And now we're going to let all that come out. Now, can you put the cap back on?
Okay.
Without touching anything. Give it a little twisty. Twist. The other way. Righty tighty. There you go. All right. And now I need you to use the little stirring stick and very carefully hold. Put your one hand out here, yeah, so it doesn't spin. Or other in that corner, that's fine. And now slowly mix that up, okay? And while you're doing that, Dad's gonna tape up this stand so we can put that down. All right, yeah, mix it up. Mix it all good so it's all one color gray. You got it? Yes. Logan's got it all mixed up good. Like a professional. Yeah. All right, I'm gonna put this down. The stand just to try to keep any excess off of the stand where we don't want it. And I'm gonna have it set up here. A little more, a little higher. There you go. Now I can come in here with my spreading stick that Logan used, and I'm just gonna try to dab it all in. So I'm gonna try to put it in a little pile here. Kind of wind it on my little stick without it running, and then we're gonna push it down into that groove, that channel, and then it's still pretty runny, right? So as it dries, it'll actually will flow down in right where I want it and create a real nice bead. Gravity will do its thing basically. Right now we just want to try to fill that channel up. And this should be a really good bond. And what I did before is like where I'm actually applying this is I used a pretty, don't push on that, Logan. I used a really coarse sanding disc to put, some scratches and scuff up the area. That way the weld, don't push on it please. That way the weld will have a better bite on the material. If this was a shiny or a smooth surface, it won't adhere as well. It'll really bite into the metal better if it's roughed up. So that's what I did. Almost done. Now I'm gonna do one more little push. Looking pretty good. Give it a little bit more material. Good. Alrighty. Take a look in there. Yeah, see that? Looking good. We did it, my man. Knuckles, come on. Alright, now we just gotta let this sit up, right? So it takes about 6 hours for it to set. 15 hours to fully dry. I'm going to wipe off my spatula here just in case we need it again. But we can come back, use a little piece of scrap cardboard to touch this to make sure that it's dry before we start handling it and unmask it. And we'll check it out again in a few hours. Alright, the epoxy's all dried up, front and back. Turned out real nice. I just went over the whole stand with a Scotch-Brite pad to clean up the metal and make it all pretty nice and smooth. And then after that, I went over it with wax and grease remover. We're going to put a little coat of gray primer on, and then we'll be ready for some color. The wind is kind of blowing that way a little bit, so I don't want to get any wind on the camera. Alright, I think that's good, dude. Now we're going to hang it up and let it dry. Can't let it touch anything.
This is going to be cool.
See? See, well, that's what it looks like.
Wow. Why can I not touch it?
Because it's wet. We just painted it, bro. Alright, so here is what it looks like. I just took the masking paper off. And it looks pretty solid. So now the key is to get a new clean tape edge right on the edge of the red. And then put another edge of to mask it off here. And then do the center white. Alright, we're going to unmask this and see how our paint edge came out. I am excited to see this. I'm telling you what, I hope it's turned out great. So first layer is the paper that was masked back from the yellow tape. Trying to reuse as much of this masking paper as I can. Alright, let's start with the back edge. Big reveal. Ooh, that's pretty clean. Looks like that's just glue on the tape. Oh yeah. Oh, that's pretty crisp. And so far all the red is staying on. Nice. Nice. Well, I'm liking that, man. That's pretty sweet. Of course there's a little bit of line there, but when we're all done, we're gonna clear that. Should look pretty good. Okay, time for the final color of blue. Let's see what it looks like. Now you might not be able to tell, but the bracket is under all this madness we have going on. Trying to continue the USA flag theme, so I've got it masked up, and I'm going to actually try to use this star template and try to put some white stars on the side of the blue. We'll see how this works out. Alright, here it is. So you can see a little bit of haze around the stars. You know, you get that when you have a little template that you just paint over with the aerosol can, so you get a little overspray underneath it. But overall, here it is. You know, I'm actually not really thrilled with how this clear came out. It actually came out a little bit hazy, and it's not as shiny, as bright as I was hoping. It's supposed to be a gloss clear, and it definitely looks more satiny or even more matte finish, but it is what it is. It's going to get scratched up and dinged up, but to help with that, I found this plastic dip in an aerosol on Amazon. So I'm going to do the top in that and see how it looks. Okay, so we just did about 4 coats of the plastic dip on the top, and hard to say. We'll see how it looks, but I think it'll be all right. It's not real heavy coats, or not real thick, I should say. So Logan's gonna peel it off. He hasn't seen this in a while. Start up here in the corner and peel it this way. Peel it towards me, gently. Hold on. This tape is kind of stuck together, right? So you gotta use and force. All right. Now hold the white, hold those stand, peel off the front piece. Yeah. What do you think?
That's so cool.
Yeah, you like it?
Yeah.
Man, I hope so, dude. A lot of work went into this, man. It's got a bunch of clear coat on it now. So all we gotta do is let the top piece dry, the red stuff we put on. Our plastic coat.
Yeah.
And then for the last finishing touch, I bought these little clear pads we can put on the bottom so it doesn't get scratched up while it's sitting on the garage floor. Alright, so Logan's putting squares on now. We're into the last one. This guy is an awesome helper. I can tell he's spent a lot of time doing Legos.
Ripping the sticky off. Mm-hmm. I'm gonna push really hard.
Yeah, perfect.
Oh.
Alrighty. So let's not touch the red. The red's still drying, but let's put it over here on the counter. Oh yeah. Look at that. Just off the ground.
Just off the ground, like.
And it's gonna give it some good grip, and plus, so it won't slide around on the concrete, and plus it'll help kind of maybe keep it from getting scratched up so much. So once the red plastic dip dries, we'll try the bike on it.
Yeah.
Alright dude, so the rubberized spray coating dried up, and
Now.
Next day, we're going to put the bike on it. So why don't you give it a try?
Okay. This one or that one?
Yeah, it goes on the left side, the non-drive side.
Okay. Try to stop.
I'm going to bring it back here a little bit.
Alright.
Yeah, so what? So you got to bring it in. I know, I'm just making sure you're getting all lined up.
That's good. You can let go.
Okay. Yeah, then make sure the tire goes in the channel.
There it is.
Alright. Looks like it's all pretty stable, right? Well, it's a little tippy if it's going that way. So maybe it needs to kind of lean into the stand, okay? See how I have the handlebars turned into it? If it goes the other way, sometimes it wants to tip.
But for this, I want to show.
Okay.
Thanks for watching the video and please subscribe.